I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. I was aware of this on Monday night, and I was, because of the amount of material that we had to broadcast on yesterday, I wasn't able to get to this story about this woman named Dunphy, who is suing former mayor, former attorney general for the Southern District here in New York, Rudy Giuliani. And it's a weird and lurid and, partial, I believe, and I'm not sure I believe all of what that's being said by this woman about Giuliani. But the fact that she's filed a 65-page complaint against Giuliani in the Southern District, the same place we filed our complaint against the city of New York and the Mellon Bank, has made headlines. It's been splashing all over everywhere. And I don't know if you've heard about it. I don't know if it's been reported on Fox or OAN or Newsmax. They may not be carrying it because it has a lot of damning information about Tribulation Trump. He and Giuliani allegedly, I don't know if I necessarily believe this, but allegedly they were partners in selling pardons for convicted criminals of federal crimes, that they were selling them for $2 million each. I don't know if that's true. In fact, I don't even believe it. But at any rate, and I'm not here promoting propaganda of stuff I don't believe or stuff isn't true, but it's news. And I figure, so I was aware of this on Monday night. I didn't get to bring it to you on Tuesday, but Chris Hayes did a pretty much updated segment of this with more pictures of the woman that Giuliani allegedly told he's going to pay her $1 million a year. And didn't pay her nothing. And the thing I find strange about it is he says he's going to pay her $1 million a year, but they had to do it undercover. Well, they did do a lot of undercover work according to the sex tapes that they got. But he didn't pay her anything, and she stayed around for 2 years. That don't make no sense. I mean, it don't make no sense. I think what happened, you know what I think? I'll tell you what I think, because I think it's always right. You know it is. I'm going to let you see this, too, and I'll tell you at the back end the same thing. That after she saw E. Jean Carroll, being able to get a liable suit against Tribulation Trump, she said, well, let me take my shot at Giuliani. Tell you what, go ahead and listen to this, and I'll be right. All right? Leave my mic open, Mr. Engineer, put me off to the side.
We have some shocking, in fact, lurid new details tonight from a lawsuit filed against one of the closest associates of the man who runs the Republican Party. I speak, of course, of Rudy Giuliani, the personal attorney to ex-President Donald Trump, who is currently being sued for $10 million by a former employee who claims that he sexually assaulted and harassed her. Now, although his career has certainly been diminished at this point, Giuliani is not an ancillary figure in American politics. He's held powerful positions since the 1980s, named the number 3 in the Department of Justice under President Ronald Reagan, later the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, of course, serving 2 terms as mayor of New York City. Giuliani's role in the Trump administration went well beyond legal representation for his longtime friend. Rudy, of course, was at the center of the ex-president's pressure campaign in Ukraine, trying to get President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate Trump's political rival Joe Biden. And the former mayor served as the chief point person, the #1 guy, the public face, certainly, for Donald Trump's attempted coup in the wake of the 2020 election. As a result of that, Giuliani actually lost his license to practice law in New York. An appeals court ruling he spread lies about voter fraud. He is also currently a target of the criminal investigation in Fulton County, Georgia, looking into the attempts by Trump and his allies to overturn the election results in that state. And this new 70-page civil complaint against Rudy Giuliani, filed yesterday in a New York State court, contains even more bombshell allegations about corruption at the highest levels of American governance. To get there, you first have to wade through a lot of truly abhorrent details and allegations against Giuliani. According to Noelle Dunphy, Giuliani, quote, worked aggressively to hire her in January of 2019, offering her $1 million salary to serve as his director of business development. He also offered to represent her for free in her ongoing dispute with an abusive ex-partner. But as Dunphy's lawyer describes it in the complaint, Giuliani's offer came with a significant catch. Giuliani was in the midst of an acrimonious divorce, and he told Ms. Dunphy that her pay would have to be deferred and her employment kept secret until the divorce proceedings finished, which he promised would be, quote, any day now. Dunphy alleges that Giuliani's seemingly generous offers were a sham motivated by his secret desire to pursue a sexual relationship with her. Quote, Giuliani began abusing Miss Dunphy almost immediately. He made clear that satisfying his sexual demands, which came virtually anytime, anywhere, was an absolute requirement of her employment and of his legal representation. He began requiring her to work at his home and out of hotel rooms so that he could easily transition from work to demanding sexual gratification and back to work. Again, according to Dunphy in the complaint, Giuliani, quote, took Viagra constantly and often demanded she work naked in a bikini or in short shorts with an American flag on them that he bought for her. Within 2 months of hiring her, Dunphy alleges that Giuliani forced her to have sexual intercourse with him, behavior that continued through the 2 years she worked for him. She also says Giuliani drank morning, noon, and night, going on alcohol-drenched rants that included sexist, racist, and anti-Semitic remarks. It's a lot. To be clear, I should say these are all allegations. They're filed in a lawsuit that has not yet been litigated. Rudy Giuliani denies all of it, including the most troubling allegations in the complaint in terms of official misconduct. In February of 2019, 1 month into her employment with Giuliani, Dunphy alleges he asked her, quote, if she knew anyone in need of a pardon, telling her that he was selling pardons for $2 million, which he and President Trump would split. He told Ms. Dunphy she could refer individuals seeking pardons to him, get this, so long as they did not go through the normal channels of the office of the pardon attorney, because correspondence going to that office would be subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. Last night, Dunphy's attorney appeared on this network telling Lawrence O'Donnell they believe they will be able to back up that explosive allegation.
Repeatedly, you say in this complaint, this conversation was recorded, this statement was recorded. It doesn't say that when Giuliani's describing the way he's selling pardons for $2 million. Is there any recording about that?
There's not a recording about that we know of. We do expect that it will be corroborated in other ways.
How else could that be corroborated?
Well, the complaint alleges that somebody else was present during those discussions, Lev Parnas, and in part, we would like to talk to him about those conversations.
Catch that name? You remember Parnas, right? Rudy Giuliani's
I remember that guy,
who
yeah,
participated in the pressure campaign in Ukraine. Parnas was ultimately convicted of campaign finance charges not directly connected with that scheme, sentenced to 20 months in prison. But he was one of the unlucky ones. On his very last day in office, Donald Trump did in fact go ahead and pardon 74 people, commuting the sentences of 70 more. And those included people like his former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, and former top fundraiser, Elliot Broidy. And throughout his presidency, we got reports about how Trump completely sidelined the normal pardon process that is supposed to go through, that's right, the Office of the Pardon Attorney at the Department of Justice, just as Rudy Giuliani allegedly said he wanted to avoid. There have also been reports about just how sketchy the market for pardons was in Trump's final days, with Trump's allies collecting fees from wealthy felons or their associates to push the White House for clemency. In fact, the New York Times even reported contemporaneously in January 2021 that a former CIA officer convicted of disclosing classified information was told that, get this, Rudy Giuliani, and I quote here, could help him secure a pardon for $2 million. So, if nothing else, the allegations put forth in this lawsuit certainly seem to require some additional investigation. It seems to me, and what do I know, the Department of Justice should be probing exactly what went down in the final days of the Trump administration, particularly on this pardon stuff, because it was clearly, even by the standards of those 4 long years, a low point.
Let me do a couple of things here. Number one is, and Chris Hayes said these are all allegations, but they're filed in a federal document. But let me say this. Giuliani, I thought, during the time he was the mayor of the city of New York, I didn't know very much about him during the time he was attorney general for the Southern District. But the time he was mayor of the city of New York, I thought did a credible job. However, you need to know that it was Giuliani back in 1988 or whatever it was who got together with the New York City Council and had them legislate tax liens, sales for properties that did not pay their taxes or water bills in New York City. that the city then had put together a structured legislation law that would allow the city to sell that amount of money as a lien to a bank. Giuliani is at the footprint of what's happening with our foreclosure. You need to know that. And we've discovered his name often as we've done research on this whole tax lien item that we're in. By the way, we're going to win this against the Bank of New York, Mellon Bank in the city of New York. We're fighting tenaciously, but it goes all the way back to Giuliani. That's one thing. The other thing about Giuliani is that when he was mayor, I thought he was a pretty good mayor, all things being equal. But the thing that I thought he did worse than anything was he allowed Al Sharpton, I'm not sure exactly what it was, whether it was Amadou Diallo, or that was killed by New York City police officers one night up in the Bronx, or some other event where Al Sharpton was able to put together some marches of a whole lot of people like Susan Sarandon, movie stars and actors. They all followed Al Sharpton up and down. Even David Dinkins was following Al Sharpton up and down the streets of New York with these massive marches. And they were only massive because Giuliani just kept, kicking the can and poking the bear, so to speak. And the more Giuliani would poke at Al Sharpton, the more Al Sharpton's statue began to rise here in New York, because he really wasn't. Al Sharpton, after Tawana Brawley, was kind of going downhill. And I think it was Amadou Diallo's death, where all these wealthy white folk and actors and all that crowd of liberals and Democrats got behind Al Sharpton and went to jail. But Giuliani kept arresting them, and they'd go back and that just kept raising Al Sharpton's stature, raising him up, his popularity. And so I fought Giuliani for that. I fault F-A-U-L-T. I find that he should not. If he had not done that, we wouldn't have to worry about Al Sharpton. He'd be somewhere, I don't know, looked like he got some sort of sickness or disease. We wouldn't have to worry about Al Sharpton. Then after Giuliani, then Obama picked him up about a decade later. Howard. But the other thing is this about Giuliani. Now, I don't know whether or not a woman would work for Giuliani having sex with him every day and not get paid. I mean, who was it, 50 Cent? They said they want to get paid? I don't know that, I'm not criticizing the woman, Ms. Dunphy, whoever she is, she filed in a lawsuit. But I want to find out, so he for 2 years, he promised her $1 million a year, but never gave it to her. But they had a lot of sex in hotel rooms and at his house, and I don't know. Said Giuliani was drunk. Anyway, I don't know if these are, I believe Giuliani being drunk, I believe that to be sure. Having sex with her, I believe that too. But I don't think anyone will stay around for 2 years and not get paid. But at any rate, we'll see how this all shakes out. But the other thing is this, and no disparaging or not impugning anybody's character. That's not what I want to do. But I just don't believe a lot of that stuff in that report. I think it's hyperbole for the most part. I think it's salacious. They're talking about we had sex in the bedroom, sex in the hotel. I think that's salacious. But is it to the point? Legally, is it to the point? That's the question. By the way, I'm learning that now by studying some legal structures here, getting ready to prepare for our foreclosure argument. So does it matter? Do the judge won't know how often they had sex unless she said she was selling sex? And I'm not saying she was doing that. I'm certainly not impugning the woman's character. God forbid, Ms. Dunphy, I hope you can get some money from him. But the other thing is that was this case in the working sister E. Jean Carroll case against Donald Trump? Did this open up a window where other women can say, well, wait a minute, Giuliani and Trump are two peas in a pod. If Trump can be liable, then Giuliani can be liable too. I don't know whether that's the case or not, and I'm certainly not impugning the woman's character. But I'll impugn Giuliani's character in a heartbeat. But I don't think he was selling. The other thing is that the lawyer said that the person who's going to be a witness to this is a fellow by the name of Les Parnes. Les Parnes got strung out and had to spend 20 months in jail because Trump wouldn't pardon him or come get him. Giuliani, if he was selling pardons, why didn't he get Les Parnes, that Russian guy who had a blonde Russian on his side? Why didn't he get? So if Les Parnes is going to join in this to be testify against Giuliani, he may have some trouble because Les Parnes is going to lie up a streak and try to get Giuliani convicted because Giuliani and Trump let Les Parnes go to jail and they didn't come to help him out. Well, they could have pardoned him, but they didn't. So that's where all that goes and where it's going to end up. We'll see how it ends up. But I don't think Giuliani was selling pardons. I don't think that Trump was selling them either. I don't think so. I mean, you never know with some of these people, but I don't think so.